we're moving back across the river, and Les Capon has come to join us. Again, no stranger to Lammas, of course. You're moving us into Tanner Street.
That's right.
So we're in the sort of Southwark Bermondsey area, and mainly in a later period?
That's right. It's mostly post-medieval. Anyone who doesn't know me, I'm at AOC Archaeology. I started as a field digger when Dominic was my boss, and now I'm a manager, but I still have to get out there and get my hands dirty because I love it. Doing a site on Tanner Street. The main picture, apart from the fellow on the left, is my attempt to get the cleanest photograph of an archaeological site that you'll see today. You can judge when you see the other ones, but it's about as clean as we can get, and that is the main feature on the site. We were called to Tanner Street in 2016, site code TNR 16, and when the archive is eventually deposited, when the client has paid some thousands of pounds towards a post-excavation, then I'll have lots of finds photos to show you. But we did an evaluation back in 2016. You might know the site on Tanner Street. It used to be a furniture warehouse, big Victorian building, knocked down in about 2010, I think. And we did an evaluation, and that all went well. We found a horn-lined pit, which I suspect may be a cesspit, not necessarily a tanning pit, but lots of cattle horn in that pit. And while we were off-site, the client managed to break their planning permission and thought the best thing to do would be to dig out any obstructions down to the level of the natural that we had recorded, using a big machine with a toothed bucket. And you can see some of these tooth marks. Now, this builder being a builder, he obviously hadn't appreciated that the features continued below the level of the natural, and it turned out that he'd left quite a lot of the site intact for us. He'd just basically removed topsoil and subsoil until he saw bright, shiny, what he thought was clean alluvium. So we did get to do quite a lot of it. Now, of course, he's complaining about having to pay for the fines. But I'm sure Chris will whip him soundly. That's Chris Constable, not any other Chris's that we may know. The site is well west of in the western part of Southwark, towards Bermondsey Eyot, and it's actually located on the south side of the Eyot. I'm going to actually walk to this. So, site's down here, a tiny blue triangle. The site itself is about the size of this room, but triangular, and the areas that we had to dig were both about 10 metres by 8, two bits side by side, targeting where the most piles were going in the excavation, because the remains were about 1 metre 60 down, or about 5'5"-ish. And of course, we couldn't have worked very close to the edge of the site. This picture shows what's left of the River Neckinger, coming down and next to Tanner Street, which crosses over on the left there, on the relatively new Tower Bridge Road. The St Saviour's Dock there, apparently, I do get distracted. The St Saviour's Dock, apparently the slum dwellings there were the model for Fagin's Den in Dickens' Oliver Twist. And I found it quite romantic being there. But our little site on Tanner Street is largely that funny shape because there's a large viaduct for the railway lines leading down to Dover and the southeast. A lot of work has been done nearby by Pre-Construct, so because I haven't read all their reports and we're only getting into the post-excavation phase now, it's going to have to be a bit of a microcosm of what we did rather than an overview of everything else. But anyone from PCA who wants to inform me later or shout out, or even ask questions if I finish too soon, feel free. This is an old map, the William Morgan map of 1682. We've got St Saviour's there still. You can see my site as a little blue triangle. Tower Bridge Road cuts down through here now. Obviously, Tower Bridge wasn't there in 1682, and Tanner Street, as it is now, is named there as 5 Foot Lane. It's not 5 foot long, It's not lived in by short people, I don't think. I think it's probably 5 foot wide. Anyone who knows Great Guildford Street over in the further towards the west knows it used to be called Bandy Leg Lane or Bandy Legged Walk. Whether that's another joke title or a real thing, I really don't know. But as you can see, Southwark not very much built up in the 1680s. One of the useful things about the tannery, which tended to, I think it dates to around 1700, closed around 1740-ish, is they're still using the same sort of technology in the early 19th century, and anyone who's read Dodd's Days at the Factories can look that up and find out that they're doing pretty much the same things in the terms of tanning and the methods that they're using in the earlier parts of the 19th century before it got heavily industrialised. I've dug a few tanning sites, and you find generally the same sort of thing within the tanning pits. So the residues from oak bark. You also needed human urine to cure your leather, and dog poo. That's the best thing you can get. Poor people, used to collect dog poo and sell it to tanners. It's quite a lucrative trade for those who didn't have any other source of income. Moving on, there's a close-up of our site. So the two squares, which aren't blue, are the two areas that we excavated. We had to do them separately, backfill one and move on to the next. We did the square on the west, that's on the left of the picture, before doing the diagonal square. And we also monitored all the piling, 184 piles all the way around the site, and we didn't really learn much apart from it was a post-medieval site. You don't always learn a lot from monitoring piles, but sometimes you have to do these things. The earliest feature we found was actually, it's shown as a L-shaped ditch in the image on the left. This is a ditch surviving to about 70 centimetres wide and about 30 centimetres deep. Little V-shaped profile, not a single find within it. We did dig most of it out. That's just a clean slot that I'm showing you. I do suspect that it is not post-medieval, no finds, you see. You're always going to get clay tobacco pipe. I do suspect it's probably not Roman, because the Romans are messy people as well. So I think we've picked up a little bit of prehistory on the southern side of Bermondsey Eyot at precisely 1.40 metres OD. It has been truncated. This is the base of what the developer took the soil away from. So he's removed the topsoil, the subsoil, any accumulated soils, down to what he thought was natural. There's something in the background, and I will talk about those as well. You can think about what those shapes might be before I get to them. And in our area one, we've got horn-lined pits, one in the centre of the picture there, a channel, probably a drainage channel, which had been replaced with a hollowed log, and hoof prints. That's what those strange circular items are. I'm not sure everyone bothers excavating hoof prints, but I'll start with the horn-lined pit, truncated by a Victorian foundation from that warehouse that I mentioned at the beginning. But you can see that all around the edge are cattle horns, all adult cattle, horns about this long, laid alternately one end and t'other end, one end, t'other end, to get a level surfaces all the way around. And all the finds within those are late 17th century, early 18th century, which gives us a good date for the pit being made and just mixing the local soil and clay and silt with the horns to make a solid edge. Within the pit, not really anything that reminded me of tanning activity, more perhaps a sort of cesspit for the tanners living on the site. Although tanner, you might think, is quite a lowly job, you actually need security of land to tan your hides over 1 or 3 or 5 or however many years, and you need to be able to invest in that business to keep it going. So a tanner would have a house for living in, houses for working in, pits for putting your goods in, and taking your leather out. You shouldn't really ever find leather on a tanning site, because that's the export from the site. You should only find the waste materials. Finds there that we quite liked: a knife with an ivory handle. So we'll probably have to contact the Convention for Endangered Species over that one. and a fascinating wooden box nailed to a plate that looks like a lock case, perhaps like some kind of doorway or lock or entrance into the tanning yard that was thrown away when it closed. Moving on, this is a little picture of our channel. That wood coming down the middle, totally desiccated, totally useless for identity, but that led towards that first pit that we saw. And between these, here's a picture of our hoof prints. We have some hooves seem to be walking this way. Some hooves are walking that way. Some of the hoof prints are very much a muddle, and I'm tempted to think, though I can't prove it because the relationship between the land and the pits is lost, that this could be a goods animal. It's hoofed, and it's got a shoe on, coming into the yard, going around on squishy ground, and then leaving again. But we can't prove its date because we've got no finds from the hooves, and there's no direct stratigraphic relationship except they're on top of that probable prehistoric ditch. But I tried doing a brass rubbing, clay rubbing of them, but drawing and photography was best. You can see that it's an uneven animal. Some are sinking in better than others. Maybe it's just variations in the solidity of the soil. But I have to ask myself, what was the land surface like that an animal is leaving hoof prints full of topsoil within natural clay? Either there's only very little topsoil, or it's very, very wet, and this animal is sinking down pretty much up to its fetlocks or deeper. Here's the other half of the site that we dig. We've got a massive tanning pit on the right, and those are the claw marks from the excavator machine that the client thought he could remove all the archaeology with. If he'd looked there on the right, he'd have probably dug that out as well. And what we have there is a pit about 8 metres long, 4 metres wide, cut into the natural alluvium. We can't prove what level it was cut from, but that was all taken out. But it was only surviving about this deep, and that's a bit shallow for a tanning pit. But the cut for the tanning pit was cut by 4 other holes, which would have received horizontal timbers crossing the pit, and we got some plank remains, so I think they actually had a planked surface halfway or 2/3 of the way down the pit, so you could actually walk within it, and get the leather goods out once they were finished without having to either reach in with hooks and perhaps damage your leather or lean over and fall in. They've actually got a working platform inside. There they are on the plan on the left, beam slots in the edges. We can talk about stratigraphy all day long, but I say you can have a cutting a cut if they're of the same period and exactly the same date. So the tanning residues we got within the pit, some sticks, some twigs, 3 different, well, let's say dog poo from 3 different animals. I say they're 3 different animals. One is from a small dog, dimension thus. One's from a slightly bigger dog, and something else the size of a Irish wolfhound or something like that. Either that or a very unfortunate small dog. So very little tanning residue, but what we did find was the post-use infill within this massive pit. We think it possibly came from a tavern or a shop or various other forms. The pottery, I think 780 different pots. I've got my figures coming up shortly. This is a cross-section. So at the base of the pit, we've got the tanning residue, and you can, I think, see our slots for the horizontal beams coming across that edge. Then we've got more gritty fill at the top and stony fill at the top, and I think fill is going into wet ground. So the tanning residue stays, but all the pottery that goes in doesn't. If Clive Orton was here, I haven't seen you here, Clive, you'd be having, oh, hello, kittens over our lovely tin glazeware. These are incomplete items now that were broken, but we also got bits of kiln waste, but we think these are coming out from one or several households. You've got all the different types, polychrome, blue and white, plain, pinkish. We've got a complete vase, nice thing, no pattern at all on it. We got lots and lots of wine bottles. I've got the figures there. So 790 different pottery vessels, mostly, in the case of chargers, large like half plates. So easily 300 millimetres or a foot wide. A complete tin glazed ware vase. Lots and lots of jars, flared dishes, borderwares, everything you might expect to find in a post-medieval deposit, but all dumped on the same day, and probably from the same property, maybe a pub or a shop. Well, I say pub, but or tavern, with all these serving dishes, chargers, plates, bowls, mugs, cups, storage jars. 40 wine or ale bottles of the sort of onion style. Venetian glass dish. It's getting a bit posh there. 185 complete clay tobacco bowls, typically with stems, about half of them surviving, and most from 2 or 3 different makers. I think we had 86 from, I want to say Hedges was his name, but I haven't written it down and it's escaping me. Other weird finds, part of a whalebone fan. You don't find them all the time. That's made from baleen, from something like a blue whale, one of the plankton-eating whales. And we've got 6 arms of the fan, with a little copper alloy rivet at the base. A little amber bead, some lead tokens, probably, they could be pilgrim tokens. A folding knife, I want to say switchblade, it is Southwark after all. One of my favourite things, which I think Helen C. has written about, is a little cockerel figurine made of pipe clay, about this tall. Definitely a male bird with the crest and everything. And there's some mention in books that children would actually pop the figure in the ground and then have a game of throwing balls at the cock. But then we also read a reference to people actually chaining their cocks to the ground and throwing balls at that. So part of the same fun as bull baiting and bear baiting is tying your cock to a stick and throwing rocks at it. I mean, where's the fun in that? But that's us now in the 21st century. I expected to find more animal bone. We only got 311 sheep bones, and they're mostly from the feet and head pieces, and the same with the cattle bones, feet and head. So that would probably represent hides that are coming to sight with just the feet and head left, and only 41 pig bones, and they're probably food items. Here's what the thing looks, another shot for the clean. Thanks to Taria holding the stick, Domenica taking a photo, and I think that's a Turkish woman called Rain just poking out her head in the background. Rain is a name of beauty in Turkey because it's rare and uncommon. There's a nice view of the pit, nice and clean. Again, you can see our poles around and the underlying blue clay of the Thames alluvium beginning to show through. That's it. That's my site in Tanner Street.